Applied Behaviour Analysis versus Supernanny.
Get out of my way!
Science versus experience.
Then mummy will put you into the naughty room.
If you want to provide that supportive, nurturing, and loving environment that your family needs, then you might not want to follow every single thing that Supernanny says.
Great.
Let me show you why. But first, let me tell you why I'm making these videos. I am on a mission to show you the good that applied behavior analysis can do. You see, applied behavior analysis is misunderstood. It is misrepresented. The science of behavior analysis can help you to create that warm and supportive environment that will help your family thrive. That's why I'm making these videos. But I didn't always work in the field of behavior analysis. In fact, I started off working in a window fabrication factory. So I was making windows in a factory. And something happened next, but we'll come back to that later. And just to illustrate the significance or the impact that this science can make on your life, I'm going to tell you about a family that was included in a study. Let's call them the Thompsons. And they actually used the word desperate. They were desperate because of the challenging behavior that they were experiencing within their family. But first, let's have a look and see what Supernanny is up to.
Tammy, what we're going to do today is I'm going to watch you and observe.
Okay.
So I want you to carry on as normal.
Okay.
I know you've got some, issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah, like
but
the shoving.
we'll get to the bottom of that and we'll find solutions.
Wonderful.
So I'm going to step back and just watch you as you normally would be, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
So over here we see the first thing that Supernanny does, which she always does, and she is carrying out observations. So observations are carried out in the natural environment, and they're very important because they show you the situations in which the behavior happens and also the situations in which that the behavior does not happen. That can be important. Observations should be carried out over a long period of time. They need to be done at different times, and also they need to be done in different settings. The key thing about observations is they can show you the antecedents, like what's happening before the behavior, and they can show you the consequences, which is what's happening after the behavior, and also they can then tell you the function. So what's the reason for the behavior? They give you information for that, which is why they're so important. What Supernanny has done is not quite how I would carry out observations, but she's doing them in the time given. So that is 1 out of 1.
Where's Caden?
I don't know.
Caden? Honey? Caden, who's 6 years old, nobody knows where he is.
So that is elopement. And elopement is a common behavior that any behavior analyst will encounter in their work. Elopement is defined as moving away and exceeding a certain distance from a caregiver's supervision. Now, for the Thompsons, elopement wasn't a problem. They had other challenges. They were receiving very little support from other professionals, which they found extremely frustrating, and they were starting to lose hope. So Laura, the mother, felt like she wasn't able to provide that nurturing environment that she wanted to, and there was lots of stress in the family. The family was unbalanced because they spent a disproportionate amount of time trying to manage the challenging behavior that was happening. They were just trying to get to the next day. They had no time for self-care, no me time. It just was not possible. On top of that, Laura couldn't really contribute to her community the way she wanted to. She couldn't volunteer, go to charity shops. She couldn't spend time with her friends. Another problem was Laura and her husband had different ideas of how to manage this challenging behavior. They weren't really working together.
Caden didn't want to eat his sandwich. Dad said he had to, and Mum went and made another sandwich. They've got different approaches and they need to come together.
And here we have an example of the Orms family not working together. We have a disagreement between the two parents on how to approach a disciplinary issue. So if I was working with you as a family, if I was working with you, trying to help you manage that challenging behavior, one thing we would check is the acceptability of the intervention that I propose, that we develop together. How much do you like that intervention? Because this is key. If you don't like the intervention, or if you don't think it's right, you're just not going to do it. And that's a big problem. So we need this in order to work from the same page. And Joe is right. We need to be on the same page to be effective. So that is 2 out of 2.
I'd like to talk about the things that I'm not too happy about. Discipline needs to be a must. There is a lack of discipline on your behalf, Tammy. You're constantly trying to convince them that they should listen to you. And you're the mum. You're in charge.
So here we have Joe's case for discipline. And in this situation, I completely agree. One important thing to note is that discipline is not the same as punishment. Now, discipline requires the individual to follow rules, and rules are important. And they are important because you can learn to follow rules quicker than your behavior can be shaped by contingencies. So basically, you don't have to suffer the mistakes or make the mistakes when you're learning to do something. You can just follow the rules that will then help you avoid those mistakes. And that's the importance of rules. So these rules have to be in place in the beginning. That's my dog having a drink, if you can hear that. And these rules have to be in place in the beginning, and they need to have consequences to be followed. So you just need a verbal statement from someone else, and then you can avoid the mistakes. And we call this rule-governed behavior. And rule-governed behavior is how we learn. It helps us learn quicker. It's how we get forward in life without having to make those mistakes. We learn from what we're told, the way we're raised, from books. Because when your child learns to follow those rules, then they can have a better quality of life and future, integrate into society, exercise that pro-social behavior. So I'm in agreement, and that is 3 out of 3. We are on a streak.
You two come together and change your parenting techniques and change your behaviour pattern. Your children will change their behaviour pattern.
Wow. I really love this, and let me tell you why. A behavior analyst uses research to predict how changing the environmental variables will change behavior. And environmental variables includes other people's behavior. So, as a parent, by changing your behavior, you can influence your child's behavior. Absolutely spot on. You see, I've worked with people who've shown severely challenging behavior and reduced that behavior to 0 rates. How? By changing the environment or changing the behavior of the people around them. Then they end up changing their behavior. That is 4 out of 4. We are on fire. I'm so happy I found something that I'm passionate about, but it wasn't always like this. As I said, I used to work in a window factory making windows. But the good thing about this job is I managed to save a good amount of money. And the plan was to use that money to buy a flat if you're in the UK, and if you're in the US, then an apartment. So I had saved up this money, built up a deposit, ready to buy this property. And then I had the bright idea to invest in a business franchise instead. And things didn't go according to plan. I'll tell you about that next.
Hey, Joe.
Hiya! I've got a routine. The routine I felt the house needed because it was very chaotic, and it gives a very solid foundation here and structure for your children, which they do need.
So if you've seen my previous videos, you'll know I'm not usually a big fan of just chucking routines in or just putting a routine in. But in this case, I absolutely agree. The routine is absolutely the right thing to do. There is a certain amount of predictability that's required in this situation. And also the routine can actually help you to develop rules and keep to those rules. So the rules can be part of the routine. For example, children helping out at different times. But these routines have to be developed in consensus. We have to develop the routines together. I'm not just going to come to you and give you my routine and say you must follow this. We have to work together. We're going to develop that routine together and make sure it's right for you and your family. So that is 5 out of 5. Wow. We might actually have our first 100% today. Let's see how it goes.
It's definitely going to take some getting used to because it's been 8 years of running things this way.
She makes a really good point here, because when we're looking to select a behavior to change, a behavior to target, we do take into account how long standing that behavior has been, because the longer standing a behavior is, then the more difficult it is to change. It's more ingrained in someone's learning history. So that is an important point.
Before I start teaching my techniques, I lay out a set of rules of what behaviour is acceptable and what behaviour is not acceptable. What I wanted to talk to you all about was household rules.
So Supernanny is again emphasizing the importance of following rules, and I am totally with her. And here's why. Rules should help you to organize your home so you can focus on your family, spend quality time together, and have time for yourself. That is 6 out of 6. As for the Thompsons, rules were not the issue. Things were deteriorating for the family, and normality was disappearing from family life. Problems at school and at home meant that their son was increasingly becoming isolated, and they spent a considerable amount of time waiting for services that actually never happened. It was extremely frustrating for them, and all they wanted was a better quality of life for their children and for themselves. Laura and her husband felt guilty because of the disproportionate amount of time that they dedicated to managing their son's challenging behavior, which they weren't actually giving to their other children. And this challenging behavior was in the form of hits to the face, to the upper body, that's aggression towards other people, but also self-injury, so head-butting surfaces and things like that. And for Laura, this challenging behavior seems like this insurmountable thing, and she was losing all hope. But we will see in a little while what happened next.
Sean and Tammy, when you see behaviour that's not acceptable, I would like you to give your children a warning and tell them, no, stop that behaviour, it's not acceptable. If you don't stop your behaviour and your behaviour carries on to be naughty, then Mummy will put you into the naughty room. I would like to use the downstairs bedroom as the naughty room.
So the naughty room is a punishment procedure, and a procedure is only classed as punishment if, when you implement it, the behavior then reduces, the future frequency of that behavior reduces. And that is a strict definition in the science of behavior analysis. So it's not punishment in the sense of, it's not a societal definition of punishment. It's only punishment if that behavior actually goes down. I've said this many times in 1 or 2 other videos. Now, this is a different kind of punishment. It's actually called a timeout procedure, an exclusionary timeout procedure, because you're removing little Declan away from a positively reinforcing environment and putting him somewhere where there is no reinforcement. And so another thing to note about this whole procedure is it's only effective if little Declan actually wants to be where you're taking him away from. So it's only effective if the environment that the person is being removed from is actually a positively reinforcing environment, that they actually want to be there. That's the only way that a timeout will work. Now, punishment procedures are a big issue. And just to say, as a behavior analyst, a certified behavior analyst in the UK, a certified behavior analyst in the US, or anywhere else in the world, you would not resort to these punishment procedures. You would not implement these punishment procedures as a first port of call, which is what looks like has happened here. Punishment procedures are a very last resort, and they require a cost-benefit analysis. There is a code of conduct, and that code of conduct says we must exhaust all positive reinforcement procedures, all reinforcement procedures, before even considering punishment procedures. And even in that case, it's a multidisciplinary decision. It's not a decision that one person makes. It'll be the guardians, the behavior analysts, social workers, or whoever needs to be involved in making that decision. So I definitely would not be implementing punishment at this stage, okay, if ever. And also the idea of taking a child and putting them in a room and keeping them in that room, that doesn't sit well. Maybe some time ago, yes, but in this day and age, that just doesn't sit well. So I don't know, That's icky. So, excuse me. No. So anyway, we go down. That's 6 out of 7.
Caden had already been warned by Tammy not to hit his brother, so he got sent off to the naughty room.
Tammy, we can come down, okay? Give them eye contact. Lower your tone so that you're being firm and authoritative, and place him into the naughty room for that unacceptable behaviour.
So this is an example of behavioral skills training. And behavioral skills training consists of 4 steps. Number 1, I'm going to describe to you the procedure and why that procedure needs to be done. And you need to be able to tell me the same thing back. You need to show your verbal competence. You can describe the procedure that's being implemented, and you can tell me why we're doing that procedure. And then number 2, I'm going to demonstrate that procedure while you're watching. And then number 3, you are going to perform that procedure while I'm watching. And then number 4, I am going to give you feedback on whether you've done it correctly and what areas need to be improved on. And then we will repeat the process until you're scoring 100%. You see, we'll take the procedure and we'll break it down into the component steps. And then we're going to be ticking off the steps as you complete them correctly. So you need to score 100% 3 times in a row before we then can say you have mastered the procedure. You can now do the procedure independently. And that's behavioral skills training. So that's how we would do it. Joe hasn't quite done it like that, but time, because of pressure, lack of resources, sometimes you might, fudge things, make things a little quicker. But we generally are in agreement, and that is 7 out of 8.
The boys love to snack on loads of junk food, and that can make them hyperactive. And then they're going to lose their appetite, and they're not going to want any of their meals. In order to stop the boys from helping themselves to all the snacks, I've brought in a snack box. Oh, I see lots of things that could go in this box.
One method for reducing behavior is to use antecedent strategies. And they are antecedent because these are strategies you put into place before the behavior happens. So in this situation, we have Joe supporting the family to put these snacks in a snack box. But she doesn't actually say how they should use the snack box. But you could do one of the following things. You could keep the Cheetos or Walker's Crisps out of sight and therefore reduce snacking. Simple. We call this reducing the salience of the discriminative stimulus. A discriminative stimulus is a signal that indicates that reinforcement is available. So basically, you're taking the snacks out of sight, and therefore you don't think about the snacks or want the snacks as often because out of sight, out of mind, as the saying goes. That's one. The second way is to do something that we call manipulating the motivating operations. So basically, instead of having the Cheetos or the Walker's Crisps available, easily accessible, what you would do is you might have something like a fruit bowl on display. Fruit bowls in various locations in the house. And so the kids can snack on fruits whenever they want. And because they are eating already have something in them, they're less likely to want to snack on other bits or the unhealthy snacks. And we call this an abolishing operation. You see, when you've gone a long time without having a preferred food, the value of that food increases to you. So if you haven't had a takeaway in a month, you might have that one day when you're just craving that takeaway. We call this an establishing operation because sometimes when you go a long time without having something, the value of that thing then increases. But then the opposite is true. So when you have too much of something, you don't value that thing as much. And that is an abolishing operation. And that's what we're trying to do here with the fruits by having the fruits available in various locations in the house and regularly, easily accessible to the kids. They snack on fruits, less likely to snack on Cheetos or Walker's Crisps. So all in all, this is a good strategy. She doesn't give details on how to use the snack box, but this is a good strategy. So we are in agreement and we are at 8 out of 9. So now, just to catch you up a little bit, if you remember, I said that I bought into a business franchise. And the reason I bought into that business franchise was when you're presented with franchise opportunities, they have projections and financial projections, and they are always good. They always look good. They're not necessarily what's actually going to happen. And what's actually happened to me is I went out of business within 3 months of buying this franchise. I was £14,000 in debt, which is about $18,500 US. I had to Google that. And also I had a van that I was stuck with. So I had this vehicle and a 5-year contract that I could not get out of. Signed this 5-year contract, and that was £263 per month, which is about $345 per month. So I was in a tight spot. So I was heavily in debt. I didn't have a job. I just lost a business. And it was a really stressful time. What happened next? I'll tell you in a bit.
Even though I've curbed the children from eating snacks, it's still not going to completely change Caden's eating problem, because that's all about control.
There's no reason, unless he's allergic to any particular food, that he shouldn't eat the same as his brothers.
When Tammy realises that she's losing control of dinner time, what she needs to do is to separate the food on Caden's plate and explain to him exactly how much more she wants him to eat.
In this line of work, one of the things that we often come across is I work with kids sometimes who are very selective about what they eat, which is okay. I mean, we have things that we like and things that we don't like. It becomes an issue when the child's diet is so restricted that it has a negative impact on their health. That's when it becomes a problem. And so one of the ways in which we tackle this issue is actually based on research, and that is to use positive reinforcement. So what you do is you set a criteria for the child, and you say to the child, you must have this specific number of bites of this non-preferred food. And then this has to be done in a set time. You start off small. So they start off with 1 bite or half a bite of this non-preferred food within 5 minutes. And then once they achieve that, deliver that positive reinforcement, that praise, and then immediately give them the preferred food. And then over time, you would gradually increase the number of bites. You would increase the criteria before they could access the verbal praise and the preferred food. And this is in research, it's been shown to increase the variety of diets for children who can be really selective eaters. We're generally on the same page. Her approach is slightly different, but interventions are always customized to the situation and the people you're working with. So all good there. So we are in agreement, and we are at 9 out of 10. Maybe I'm just feeling generous today, but wow.
Let's eat that 1 bite of corn.
Keep on him, keep on him.
Caden was still resisting to eat, and so I taught Sean how to set by example, show and tell.
Check it out. Dad's gonna get his bite.
Get your bite.
Get yours.
Do it together. It's a teamwork.
1, 2, 3, go.
Atta boy, good boy.
Woohoo! Way to go,
Well
babe.
done,
That's
sit.
my boy.
So that right there is an example of modeling. So this is where I would perform the task and then the child imitates the task. And modeling is very effective, especially when the learner is imitating a model that's being provided by someone that they love and they respect. So totally in agreement again, and we are up to 10 out of 11.
Dad sat down to do homework with Chandler.
I'm trying to be there for my wife when, when she needs help. It's not going to be easy. Okay, so you need to think of a sentence. Chan, pay attention to your work.
Yeah.
Sit down, darling. Let's have a look.
Hey. Chan, we're not going to do this.
Sometimes children bottle up what they're feeling inside, and what you get is a secondary emotion, and sometimes that comes out physical, with attitude or with aggression. Can I ask you why you feel really upset? Do you talk to Jojo and tell me, and then we'll work through it together?
I'm just not happy.
You're not happy? Then you tell me why you're not happy.
I don't know. I just don't want to say it.
Why is that, darling?
I don't even know it. God, I just want to work with Mom anyways.
Is there any reason why you like to do it with Mum and not Dad?
Because Dad yells at me sometimes.
Did I yell at you?
You yelled at me in the first grade.
Okay, listen to that, because that's valid. Okay? How does that make you feel when Dad yells at you?
It makes me mad.
I'm very pleased that you've said how it makes you feel, because that's important. Okay, Chandler, it's important. So no yelling, Daddy, okay?
Okay.
No yelling.
So when we don't have a plan, of how we're going to approach the subject of discipline, we often default to shouting. Myself included here, so don't beat yourself up. Here's the problem with shouting. It is an unconditioned punisher. That is, you do not need prior contact with shouting to find it aversive. So you can shout at a newborn baby and they will cry. The thing is, when you shout, your child might stop that behavior or reduce that behavior. And because that's happened, you're now in a cycle of negative reinforcement. That is, you are doing something that removes something aversive to you and therefore strengthens that behavior. So you keep on shouting because it reduces the behavior. That's a problem. And the reason is you might become what is called a conditioned aversive stimulus. You have paired yourself with something that is aversive repeatedly, so much so that you yourself have now become aversive. And this will affect your relationship, which is exactly what we see here. And then what happens next? Your child begins to avoid you because you shout. You are an aversive stimulus. The good news is this can be broken. All you need to do is stop shouting. So you're breaking that pairing of yourself and the shouting. It can be broken. You just need to stop shouting and use these alternative strategies to actually implement discipline in your family. Another problem is by shouting, you are actually modeling to the child what they need to do when they want a behavior to change. You are modeling negative control techniques. So you are modeling shouting for them. So they are more likely to shout when they want something to stop as well. So Joe has done an absolutely fantastic job here by actually encouraging Chandler to speak up and let Sean know the impact of his shouting and what that impact is on him. And you can see how devastated Sean is from learning this information. But the most important thing here is that this will influence Sean's behavior in the future and hopefully build a richer, stronger relationship between father and son. So back to the Thompson family. Out of desperation and frustration, they started doing their own research online, reading blogs and going into online forums. They were looking for evidence-based approaches that would help them improve their quality of life. So a major pain point from them was the stress that they were experiencing, the lack of me time, the lack of quality time in the family, the disproportionate time that they were spending trying to manage challenging behavior and didn't feel like they could give the same amount of time to their other children. And the lack of support from professional services that they were banking on, it just wasn't happening. And this was extremely frustrating. But in their search, they then came across the science of behavior analysis. And the more they dug into it, the more they saw the positive impact that it was having in other people's lives, and they wanted their best for the child. I mean, who doesn't? But the tipping thing, the main thing for them was that it was actually backed by scientific evidence. It was evidence-based. There were tons and tons of research papers backing up this approach. So they looked into it some more, and I'll tell you what happens next.
So I'm gone now for a while, and Tammy and Sean have to do it on their own because I can't be around forever.
And there she goes. There goes Joe. Now, one key difference: before I leave a family, I am going to make sure that they have a written plan down. They have a behavior support plan that is written down that they can refer back to. And the second thing is, I'm going to make sure that the family or the people who are putting this intervention into place, they are trained to mastery. So we're going to make sure that you're comfortable and you know what you're doing when I leave. So for this reason, we go down. We're down to 11 out of 13. So speaking of down, I was feeling really down, being heavily in debt and being stuck with this contract hire for 5 years. And I needed a job. And in the UK, there are generally two kinds of jobs that you can get with relative ease. If you go onto a jobs board right now, you will find these two kinds of jobs. Number one was sales, and I tried sales, and I wasn't very good at it. I just wasn't good at being dishonest. And the second one was care. And so I got into care, and I worked with the elderly. Then I started working with people with learning disabilities and also those who display behaviors of concern. those who display challenging behavior. So this was the beginning, and we'll come back to that.
After I've left the household, I go away for a couple of days, and when I come back, I show the family footage of where they need to perfect the techniques that they have found difficult whilst I've been away.
Okay, so this is an example of something called video modeling and feedback, and this has been shown to improve performance. It's a valid strategy.
Okay.
I'm only asking for one bite, honey. One bite is all I ask.
Right, and there. That is where I would have stopped the nonsense. Your low voice should have come in, and it should have been, Caden, sit at the table properly and finish the 2 spoonfuls. Otherwise, you're going into the naughty room because you are not listening to me.
Okay.
And that right there is an example of feedback that is given as part of behavioral skills training. So it improves your performance by letting you know what you should do next time to make things better. So again, we're in agreement, and we are at 12 out of 14.
I have bought a door lock.
Okay.
What I would like to establish is your awareness of where the children are. I think it's a very good idea that they start coming to you and asking you if they can go out.
So here we have an example of another antecedent strategy. And remember, an antecedent strategy is just a strategy you put into place before the behavior happens. Now we have a lock on the door, and this lock on the door signals that reinforcement is no longer available for the behavior of just wandering outside without letting Tammy know. In behavioral terms, we call this an S delta, which is the signal that reinforcement for a particular behavior is no longer available. So now, Tammy and the key are now the signal that says you can go outside if you come and ask me and I say yes. So stimulus control has been transferred to Tammy. So this is a simple and effective strategy for bringing that behavior under the correct stimulus control. So that is 13 out of 15. I think that was just a very complicated way of saying that the lock on the door solved the problem.
Tonight, the Orme family had a barbecue and they invited their friends.
As usual, Caden was resisting to eat his food again.
Caden, have you taken bites? Well, you just have to sit here until you take those bites, okay?
You've just got to have a couple of spoonfuls to try for Mummy and then you can get down.
Look at me. I'm giving you 1 more minute to take a bite of that. And if you don't take a bite of that, you're going to go into the naughty room. I can see now that's a control thing, and he's going to eat it. I was catering too much. There we go.
Way to go, Caden. Way to go, darling.
And here we see Tammy executing on those procedures that she's learned and that have been shaped or improved using this video modeling and feedback. And as you can see, it's effective. The science of behavior analysis is sound. It works. The problem comes in how people choose to use this science. It's a tool, but then you have good people in the world, you have not so great people in the world. The science is effective. The problem is the behaviors that we choose to change. So back to the Thompsons. Having done their research and found the scientific evidence supporting applied behavior analysis, they actually used their own money because they couldn't get funding from local authorities or the proper organizations. They used their own money to arrange an ABA program for their son. So they arranged for a behavior program to be delivered in their home by an ABA agency. And this agency did a functional behavior assessment, which is a type of assessment that looks to find out why someone behaves the way they do in a particular situation. Because once you have this information, you can then use it to design strategies. You can use it to make sure that the person's needs continue to be met, but in a way that reduces behaviors of concern, but increases their skills. So they actually taught their son functional communication to make sure that his needs were met. They actually taught their son to be able to cope with disappointment and also to tolerate delays. And this made such a massive difference to their quality of life, particularly when it comes to aggression, because that just reduced. Now, there's a much lower level of stress within the family. They get to spend quality time. They're able to spend quality time. Their son is understood by people who are outside of the family, and the whole family has a more optimistic look, a positive outlook on their son's future, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, can you place a price on that?
My household is so different. Everything is running more smoothly. There's not as much chaos in the house. Caden's eating his dinner. He doesn't come in and out of the pantry 500 times a day.
Very
We're
proud of you.
super proud of you, honey.
Good. That was very good.
There's been a big change in Chandler.
And so also we have the highest ever agreement between Applied Behaviour Analysis and Supernanny's approach, and we are at an amazing 87%. And as for my story, I ended up working with a boy who displayed challenging behavior, and I tried everything. The people I worked with, my manager, we tried to support this boy, throwing different ideas and trying different approaches, but nothing seemed to help. And I wish I knew then what I know now. I wish I had these skills that I have now. I wish I had them back then, because I feel like we failed this gentleman. He was a 19-year-old boy and he was super fun. But the way we supported him, we didn't have the skills or the knowledge. And actually, he lost his home. He lost the place he was living. They decided that they couldn't cope with having him live in that place. He had to move somewhere else. And this is what sparked this fire, this journey. This is the reason why I'm making these videos. And this is why I want to spread the positive message of what applied behavior analysis can do, because after that I've worked with many people and have seen the positive impact, the improvements in quality of life that applied behavior analysis has actually brought about. So check out the next video to see how you can create that supportive, loving environment and to see how you can improve your family's quality of life.